Hi, good evening, everyone. Tonight we have Andrew Mullins on. Andrew, there's not a lot of people signed in just yet, so we'll give it a few minutes before we go over your information. But I want to go ahead and thank you for hopping on tonight,
Thanks for
especially with
having
it
me.
with it being last minute. So we kind of Ralph and I were both really busy this week, and I was going to get up with a few people, and we've been wanting to have you on here anyways. And then Ralph had something come up, an emergency that he was not able to be on tonight. Um, so I appreciate you coming on, especially last minute.
Like I said, I appreciate you having me.
So we'll just go ahead and get started. Let's see. Hey, Chris Moffat said, "What's up, Andrew?"
What's up?
So, Andrew, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you track at, how long you've been tracking, just a little short bio about yourself?
I've been tracking for about 8 years now. I think this year will be either my eighth or ninth season going into. Um, I track in the Rockies. I track Missouri, Nebraska, Kansas, Tennessee, Arkansas. Tracked in the Carolinas. So,
Nice. Yeah. So, last year, where'd you do most of your tracking at?
well, most of my tracking went out of Missouri, but uh, big section of my tracking at the beginning of all of September into October went into it was in the Rockies.
Okay. Tracking elk.
Yep.
So, how many elk did you recover this year?
I got the track five, not five. I got the track 15 elk, and I recovered nine of them.
Wow, that's pretty good. So, how much different was it as far as transitioning from whitetail to elk? Is I know the dogs transition fine because a lot of people, they think that there's a difference because an elk doesn't have an interdigital, but they still release pheromones, um, the same chemical pheromone as a whitetail. It's just not through the interdigital gland. Um, but as far as, did you see a difference in your dog tracking elk
No,
versus the whitetail?
not really. I mean, there are differences in the Rockies. I mean, when you're in the Rockies, it's a totally different world.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, the track starts sometimes 6.8 miles up the mountain in the snow peaks. So, you have to hike there. That's not just pulling up your car and um, I shot it right over here. So that's the big difference. Besides the actual dog being able to track it, no, um, not not one bit. I mean, there was a situation where I was tracking an elk, and the guy says we saw the elk rejoin the herd, and they went up the mountain, and we got to tracking it. And as soon as that elk pulled off out of the herd, my dog took me right off out of where the herd went, and we found that elk. So, I mean, you would think that we would have been, if it was something that could have messed it up, it would have. Um,
Yeah, that just goes to prove that they do release pheromones because and I know this from tracking other herd animals, and I have tracked elk, but not in the Rockies. It was in high fences, and axis are the same way. They're a herd animal. Well, how does that dog distinguish? When they get back into a herd. I mean, I've had elk and axis get into herds of 20, 30 or more in a high fence, and that animal with the declining health always separates from the herd at some point once it gets weak enough, or I should say, the herd separates themselves from that sick animal, and the dogs stay true to what they were trained to do. So that's something I wanted to hit on because a lot of people, there's a misconception that elk is different. like you said, it would be more of a terrain challenge in the Rockies,
It is.
especially altitude, the elevation and them mountains.
Right. That's one of the big things. The other big thing is that you cannot. A lot of, and everybody's got their own little style and stuff like that. But if your dog gets off gets off, you got to know it out there.
Right.
The restarts are almost slim to none. I mean, you're not going to hike back up the mountain a mile to. If your dog gets off, you better know that he's off.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that for sure. I track, mainly tracking the flatlands and swamps, and I couldn't imagine, tracking in a situation like that with a dog that you do not know how to read very well and have to hike all those miles, back up a mountain to restart. That would be brutal. Um, so on average, what would you say your average distance you tracked is?
What do you mean on average of distance that I actually recover the animal?
Yeah, recover the animal.
About 70% of them I say are recovered in within 800 yards.
Sorry about that. I had to go take care of some barking dogs.
I say about 70% of them are recovered in within 800 yards. It's that other 30% that you can push for a long time.
Right.
And I will say there is a difference between the elk and the deer on that. There is that little bit of difference because whatever a whitetail will do, it seems like the elk can do double.
Gotcha. So, tell us about your dogs.
Well, I've got a healer beagle, which he's the one that I started with. I got him from Brady Hessington, a buddy of mine that got me into this. Then I got wired hair dachshunds from another buddy of mine, Brad Shoemaker, and he got me into the wired hair dachshunds. And I enjoy tracking for them both, but they're different.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's like me. I train many different breeds, but I also own and track with different breeds. And the different breeds have their strengths and weaknesses. Sorry, text is coming through. So we had a question come or a comment in question, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. It says it's from Dustin. It says, I'm starting to believe most dogs that are trained to track will track whatever you ask them to. Would this be correct thinking? I'm sure different scents and different terrain make a difference in how well a dog is trained as well. Thoughts on this? My opinion is yes, a dog that is trained to track will track what you ask them if they're trained that way. I don't want my dog to track whatever scent I put them on. I want my dog to stay true to the deer scent or the wounded game trail. So I'm not a fan of just any scent tracking. I'm not a fan of um, synthetic scents. I'm not a fan of training with tanned hides. I'm a fan of training with the real deal. What's your thoughts on that, Andrew?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much the same line there. I've every once in a while we get calls for recovering lost pets, and the only times that I've ever been able to recover them, the dog's been able to track them, is they're wounded. So whatever they're releasing, it's telling my dog that there's something wounded over there, and it's kind of odd. It starts the same as a deer track. The dog was hit by a car. You put the dog on it, and he goes around. He finds a dog laying in a ditch somewhere. you know.
Yeah.
But if they just get up and run away, there's no tracking that. I mean, I hear people saying that's possible. I mean, dogs will go to dogs, but they're not tracking it. Um, and I wouldn't want them to either. I wouldn't want them sitting there. Hey, find that. Put them on a blanket that the dog rolls up with, and you'd be able to find it now. You know.
Yeah, and I have successfully trained dogs to track whatever scent I put them on. I used to own a beagle. I had it for a short time. It would trail people, lost pets. I mean, anything you put it on, it would trail. That John and I trained, but I ended up getting rid of that dog. Not because of that. I mean, it didn't fit. It didn't fit my pack. And
Now,
by pack, I'm not saying I pack the dogs together. It just didn't offer something that I didn't already have in another dog that was more experienced.
yeah, I mean, problems if your dog's just going on whatever scent you put them on. I mean, because half these tracks that we start, the hunter doesn't even know where they shot them. You know, there's no drop of blood. We're just trying to find. I mean, if I sat the dog down and just put him on a trail, we're going to run another deer.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that's the key. Um, and the other thing, talking about the synthetic scents, you see a lot of, especially in the last couple of years, there's some products out there claiming interdigital scent. Well, the interdigital gland produces a pheromone, and inside that gland is comprised of 46 volatile compounds. Well, every single company that has the interdigital scent, I have reached out to, emailed, or called and asked, "Hey, what is the compound?" Well, first off, most of them says it's taken from live deer that are unharmed. Because they're trying to be on the political side. Um, but the thing is that we lost Andrew. Um,
sorry, got a phone call.
oh, that's all right. Mine's done
It
it before
vibrated
too.
me off.
So the thing
You there?
is, yes,
So
yeah, we can see you.
you froze.
All right, can you? What about now? You may have to swipe out of that screen and then click back on it. I did that before. Like, go to your home screen and then go back to it. Maybe it'll
So
work
we
now.
lost connection somehow.
All right. I can't text him, so if anyone has his phone number, let him know that it's working. um, all right. So Dustin says, I use hose with tracking shoes. This was just something that I have been curious about. I appreciate the feedback from you both. So what I was saying is, it's a
Let's
specific
see.
compound out of the 46 components. Think about how many different chemical pheromones that can be
I may have
made
to
up of
leave
those
and
46
rejoin if
compounds.
it kicked me out.
Um, so while he's doing that, I'm just going to go ahead. So, anyways, I don't know of a product out there that is specifically wounded deer scent other than hooves. Hey, Andrew, you back? Oh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
So you were still on when that happened. This happened to me before when I was logged in on my phone remotely. If you get a call, you can go out of that screen, like onto your home screen, and then go back in. It should pop right back up, but we could still hear you and see you.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't.
Um, yeah, it happens. So Dustin said he uses hose with shoes. He was just curious about that. And I was basically just saying that, I don't know of a product out there that 100% has the wounded fair or the declining health pheromone. So I would shy away from it. If you don't have any hose from deer that's ran off, for years people train with just blood. And you can start a dog that way. Will you get the same results? I think so, but it takes longer to produce that dog because they're going to have to put more together in the field because you're not going to get all the you're still going to get your disturbed earth, you're still going to get you like the iron in the blood and the liver. Um, you're still going to teach them to follow that trail, but there's going to be aspects missing that they can learn in the field on their own. But if you can get hosed from a deer that's been shot, wounded, and ran, that's the way to go. But talking about lost pets, Michael Beck said, stay away from lost pets. Here in Florida this week on the Florida Blood Trailing Network, someone posted that they wanted help looking for two lost anteaters. And one of our trackers did go out there and did track. They were not successful. Um, I was told that they did lead them in the right direction, and one of them was recovered that either that day or the next morning. I don't know if the other one's been recovered yet, but that's probably the strangest one that I've heard someone actually going on was a lost anteater.
Oh God. Yeah, the lost pet thing, the only time I'll do it is if they have, it's a vehicle accident or something like that, and the dog got out of the car, and the dog may be injured, or somebody they hit the dog and they saw the dog run off, and the owners are looking to see if we can find it because they've been looking all over for it, and we'll do stuff like that. But you get a lot of weird calls every year for that. My wife had one that she was actually going to go take, and um, the lady said she was looking for a dog, but she could hear it. So she thought, slam dunk, I'm going to go find this person's dog. She can hear it. Well, apparently she had lost her dog like 4 months ago, and she's still hearing it barking.
Oh wow! So that reminds me of one I shared it on one of the Facebook groups. They were asking about strange calls and stuff, and I actually got a call from a lady that said that the spirit of her dog came to her and told her to call me um, because their neighbor killed the dog and buried it, and that my dog, the spirit of her dog, would talk to my dog and lead them to where the dog was buried so that they could have closure. So that's probably the strangest call I've gotten. Yeah, so it's something else. Michael Beck said we helped with two young Highlander bulls, got close, and they were recovered the next morning, close to where we stopped. Yeah, so it definitely happens. But Chris Mama said that Southern voodoo. Actually, I can't remember. I think she was in California because there for a while, and still off the UBT list, find a tracker list. I get calls for lost cats and dogs in California, and I don't know why. And some of these people are like, we will buy a plane ticket and fly you to California to come look for my lost pet. And I'm like, you probably don't want my cur dog coming to look for your cat. um, Chuck Darby said, my weirdest one was for some horses that had been out for 2 weeks. They were on national forest. Yeah, it's so Andrew, I seen on Facebook, and you and I have talked a little bit. You just got back from an event in Colorado. Who put on that event?
That was Scott Gillespie. That's an outstanding guy, good tracker, amazing hunter. He started the whole Rocky Mountain big game recovery. Before that, there was nothing. He's made a lot of headway with it. Like I said, check him up. He's an outstanding guy. Awesome event. I was around a lot of experienced trackers, guys that got more experience than me. Just anytime you're out there, it's a blast. I got, I love the people. I love meeting people that are interested in the same stuff that I am. That's why events like this, events are important because we get around people that have the same passions.
Right. Yep. And I tell you, every event I go to, I learn something. A lot of it is redundant, I'll say that. Just because, I've been to so many over the years that, you're going to hear the same things over and over again because a lot of it is geared towards newer trackers that or people that are interested in getting into it or hunters that may be there that you got to educate. And but even then, I've been doing this a very long time. I've recovered a lot of deer, trained over 1,000 dogs, um, and I still take away something from every event.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times it's, and not just that, it reminds you of stuff that you forgot.
Yep.
I don't.
Oh yeah.
I find out I remember stuff when I'm out tracking, like, oh, I haven't seen this in a few years. Something that reminds me of something that I've already learned. But I mean, those are great for, just re-educating you the same, drilling it back into you because we do, you do this, you forget, a handful of stuff that you've learned that is neat or important, you know?
Yeah. And I seen y'all got a decent amount of snow while you were there, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
then I believe I seen Scott posted that he went out and got some oxygen bottles for the people.
It got
Uh,
oxygen bottles for some people. Yeah, they some girls that I think they're Florida girls, but he got oxygen bottles for them because they were having a hard time out there. I told them, don't worry about that. I said, if these people from the mountains come down to Florida, you could tell them to suck air. I
oh
said, because
yeah.
they will be struggling.
Yep.
Uh,
Especially these swamps and whew. But yeah, and we were just in Mississippi at Chuck and Brandy's event, and I tell you, there was some fairly steep creek bottoms that we don't have here, and I was feeling it. Um, Not so much while we were there. When I got back, I was feeling it.
oh yeah.
But that was a great venue. And so, Andrew, I want to let everyone know that you're actually in the final stages of becoming a judge for the American Blood Trackers, um, which will be great for the people in Missouri Missouri, Arkansas,
Kansas.
well, yeah, Kansas, pretty much all. I mean, you travel too, so um, you'll be a tremendous asset for the tracking community in your region. You already are, but I mean, as far as the opportunity for people to test.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so, speaking of events, we've got an announcement to make. We are having an event. It's already posted. We have several events posted. The first one of 2025 is going to be in Louisiana with Duval Catahoulas. We had an awesome time there last year. Um, and Vicky said Pennsylvania. I'm going to get to that, Vicky, but right now I'm talking about next year's schedule. But we are going to talk about the Pennsylvania event. Um, but on our schedule right now, we have in February we have Louisiana with Duval Catahoulas. That's going to be a huge event. It was awesome venue last year. We tested a lot of dogs. Um, then the next weekend, which will be the end of February 28th, March 1st and 2nd, will be in Kennard, Florida. And we will be having a special guest there, and I'm going to share his picture when we talk about him here. His name is Kinsey Wheeler. Kinsey will be performing live. He is a country music singer, and he was runner up on The Voice for season 20. You need to check out his music. I believe one of his latest ones. He's got some really good ones that he's wrote himself, and but he also just redid Deanna Carter's "Strawberry Wine" and phenomenal. But Kinsey has opened for Michael Ray, Charlie Daniels, Craig Campbell, Luke Bryan. He's headlined at House of Blues, Grand Ole Opry 5000, Old Red, multiple Old Red locations, the Florida Strawberry Festival, and he will be performing live at our event on March 1st in Kennard, Florida. So you guys don't want to miss that event. It's going to be an awesome time. Um, he is, and not only is he a great singer, Kinsey has a lab um, that he has just started training, and he actually Kinsey came to our house and we worked with him and his lab and worked with some handler stuff, and the dog is fantastic. So not only is he a great country singer, he's getting into tracking. He's super excited about tracking. He's got an excellent dog, and we are trying to get him to write a song about tracking. So hopefully that will happen. And I'm going to push him, say, hey, you need to have it written so that you can perform live or perform sing the song live at our event for the first time. So that's going to be a good time. Also in 2025, we're going back to Stockton, Georgia. Um, we're going back to Alabama. We are currently working on Arkansas, Tennessee, and West Virginia, and there's some others still in the works also. Um, yeah, debut the tracking song at the tracking event. That's what I was trying to say, and I fumble with my words. But definitely check him out. And like I said, it should be a great time. And I'm telling you, that man can sing. So back to events, as Vicky said, our next event will be in Pennsylvania. So my family and I, we're actually leaving this Sunday or Monday to head up there, but we're doing a little family vacation along the way. We'll actually get on site Thursday night because we will start testing Friday. We will have our seminar Saturday with some testing and testing on Sunday. I believe right now we have about 18 tests scheduled, and we know there's a couple more that's going to be adding to that. Um, and I believe Joe Tenney's coming to judge. I'll be there. Jason Byers coming up from Florida. Jason Bell is heading up there from Georgia. Ralph Bennett's heading up from Florida. Um, so it's going to be a good time. Vicky Church should be there, along with many other trackers from that region. It'll be a good time. I don't know. I don't know if there has ever been an event in Pennsylvania or when the last one was, but I know it's been a long time. So I'm excited about that one. And after that, our next one is in September in Iowa, which Andrew, I believe you won't be able to be there because you'll be tracking. Um,
I'll
but
be.
that's part of it.
Uh,
Oh, so I should have mentioned that. Darren Miner said he will be there with special pricing on scent shoes for ABTA members.
oh,
And you need some, don't you, Andrew?
I need some.
I I tell you, I've worn a lot of shoes, several different models, and his are by far the most comfortable to walk in.
I've tried several different models. I haven't tried that one yet. Most of them I hate. So I've got a pair right now that are metal, and they've got the hoof on the back. It works. I still don't care for it that much. It's clunky, and they slip as I'm walking around. But
Yeah.
but most of them I I don't see the big fuss in some of them. They seem like I roll my ankles more than anything else. So
Yeah, any of them you're gonna be a little unstable side to side, but Darren's are not as bad as the rest. Um, and Vicky Church said Darren Miner, what's the show special? And he said attend to see. I like that. Um, but yeah, it'll be a good time up there for sure. I'm looking forward to that weather there. It's already hot here in Florida, and we were looking at the weather there, and it's 40s and 60s is what it's showing right now. Of course, that can change between now and then, um, but yeah, that'd be a good time. But so Andrew, do you have any questions or comments or anything you wanted to share with everyone?
Questions I don't want to share with any. Well, this is a whole new for me speaking on this. This is actually kind of neat. Getting able to conversate with everybody. I still can't see the questions that come in, but you know, I'm
That's
sure
why
about.
I'm reading them to you. There is a way you can do it on there, but I can't remember because I'm not looking at my phone screen. But that's why I'm reading them to you, so you know.
Yeah, these events, like I said, they're so important for us to continue to learn, continue to uh, be able to pursue this passion. We get to know people in other states. It opens up the world for us. Um, you know, every state is different that you track in. I mean, it's just I've tracked in the marshes in North Carolina. And I can't imagine going to Florida and having to go to that marsh. I mean, uh, we used to joke in North Carolina, if they get shot anywhere near a marsh, that's the first place that buck's going to run.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, uh, it's just being a part of this right now I think this is something that's going to be really special here in the near future, with all these events going on, really educating people about tracking, because, we do learn at other events, a little bit here and there, but to actually have a platform that's actually teaching. When I first started doing this, there was no teaching. I learned from my peers, Brady. I learned from Brad Shoemaker, took me up under his wing. If I didn't have that, I'd have probably still been sitting there yanking my dog all over the woods. Um, you know, so these events really, really are going to help out educating people on how to actually do these things properly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a question come in that I missed earlier. From Michael Beck, it says, we all have an idea on how a dog's nose works. Our dogs are also tracking us on training lines, especially as we decrease the amount of blood and age of hooves. Have any ideas to cut down on our impact when laying a line? Michael, I'll go ahead and tell you, and you can find all the videos and confirm what I'm saying. You cannot eliminate your scent. Any scent eliminating product or claimed scent elimination is it's a gimmick. There's been video after video proving that you cannot eliminate the human scent. The key is aging that track. Um, and I'll say we train, like I said, we train a lot of dogs. John Vaughn and I, and one thing we do is he'll lay lines sometimes, and I'll handle the dog, or my son will lay it. Anyways, we vary it up so there's 3 or 4 of us laying lines, and the dogs stay true to it, and we'll even cross the lines ourselves as kind of like a grid search situation. So we throw everything at them in our training program, but I will say that the human scent, yeah, people always say, oh, they're tracking human scent. You'll see people with fishing poles and dragging stuff, and it doesn't matter. The biggest thing is aging those trails because your human scent dissipates quicker. I mean, the bigger thing is, and even like when we lay mock tracks, we are creating a lot more disturbed earth, broken vegetation than a deer would. So that's what I tell everyone. I mean, you may think you're making it as natural as possible with using sticks or you know even a fishing pole out the side of a four-wheeler. You're still creating a ton of disturbed earth and broken vegetation, even more so doing that. um, so the key is age. Do you agree, Andrew?
Absolutely.
you know
Absolutely.
uh, yeah, rubber boots don't eliminate sin either. Nothing does. um, I just want to put that out there. I mean, I watched a video of I believe it was a Malinois that they, I don't know why this keeps, it was a Malinois that they actually took someone's clothes and they sprayed them with this sin elimination spray and buried them. I think it was like a few feet in the ground, and the dog went right to it. So it it definitely doesn't work. Sorry, I got messages coming through trying to catch up on them. Sometimes people send me questions through text and Facebook Messenger, and um, but it was a little sidebar conversation that I'm going to mute here. Um, so hopefully that answers your question, Michael. Says thank you. I do all kinds of stuff to try to keep Dexter honest. Yeah, and that's the thing. The key is age, and I'm even more. These text after text. My phone doesn't quit.
I'm seeing them now too.
Yeah. Um. So Chuck says scent comes off the heads of humans. Yeah, it does. It also comes off the arms, the legs, the. I mean, you got scent all over your body. You got dead skin. You got oils. You got. I mean, it doesn't just come off of the human head. I mean, you got dander falling off of you all over the place. Um, you got pheromones. I mean, we release pheromones through our salivary glands and hair follicles and everything. So,
I've got
like I said, you can't eliminate your scent.
something interesting about scent to say. If you've ever, I do long distance hikes every few years, and that means I don't bathe for weeks and weeks. Well, when I basically do these long distance hikes out in the mountains, I'll be out there for 4.5 months hiking. And when somebody has come from the city and they've walked through, I can smell them 10 minutes after they walked by me as I'm going down the path. And it's unbelievable how we actually smell. And that scent lasts through the woods. I can smell it. And everybody else that has ever done these long distance hikes will say the same thing. It is so weird how the soaps and the perfumes and the stuff that we actually put on our shampoos actually go through the woods and they hold there. Um, and imagine what a dog could actually smell of that. You know, uh, it would be just almost mind blowing what they're actually smelling.
Oh yeah, yeah, and like what Brandy Darby just said right here, and we see it. She said, "You want to see what falls off of people and dogs? Get hardwoods and don't sweep for a day." And no doubt, and a deer's no different. I mean, people's no different. Deer's no different. Dog's no different. Lyle says, 6 months into a combat deployment, I can smell a woman 3 miles out.
I bet he
so,
can.
so an interesting story. When I began my research on chemical pheromones, and how the deer, the Jacobson's organ works on the dogs and pheromones of the deer. It also transitioned over into snakes, snake pheromones in Jacobson, Oregon, and then people. The first study was done in 1953. But here's the interesting thing. They did a study on people and they went to strip clubs. And some of you probably heard me say this before. Um, and I want to say they did, I can't remember exactly how many, it was like 8 to 10 strip clubs they went to. And, anyways, each night, the woman that made the most money, all the women had something in common. And it wasn't looks, it wasn't, they were revealing more, it wasn't that they could dance better. They were all ovulating. Well, we don't, I mean, men doesn't necessarily know that women are ovulating, but the women give off a chemical pheromone, and humans have a Jacobson organ located in the back of their throat that basically interprets that chemical pheromone that the women are giving off when they're ovulating, and they made more money. So pretty interesting. Um, Brandy said, my ex-husband said the same thing. When they go for exercises, he could do the same. And Chris Moffitt said 100% Lyle. Um, yeah, so it's pretty neat stuff. I mean, I'm kind of, I guess you'd say I'm a nerd when it comes to researching and studying this, the the scents and pheromones and how the nose works and other organs. And we could go down a long trail of all the scents on a track. I mean, there's so much stuff, but there's always disturbed earth. There's always broken vegetation unless you're on a rock, but you're still going to have disturbed earth. But your main ones is going to be disturbed earth, broken vegetation, the dander, and always chemical pheromone, for whether it's on a whitetail from the interdigital gland, it could be the metatarsal gland, salivary glands, depending on what animal. If you're tracking bear, which I believe you're going to do this year, uh, the pedal gland in the pad. So there's always all of that on there. Um,
And honestly, the bears that I've tracked have, it's almost been the easiest tracks I've ever had.
oh, ton
Uh,
of scent, ton of scent.
so much, and it's been a just hit it like this, and so it, they've got to be putting off something, um, you know. But the other thing that I noticed with the dogs, with predators like bears and stuff like that, I guess you can consider them like a predator. They they eat a little bit of meat, but the dogs know from the moment they start the track that they're on something different.
Yep,
And I'll have the
yep.
dog actually growl half the track. You
And
know.
they're a lot more cautious when as the closer they get.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing to me that the dog's be able to tell that.
Yeah. Cassidy says, Kenny isn't kidding when he calls himself a nerd. When he did the presentation on the pheromones back in Fargo, Georgia, she said her mind was blown. Like I said, it is mind blowing, and what's even more mind blowing is how difficult it is to find this stuff. I mean, I have hours and hours, days and days of digging for research, and some of it you can't even find online. The majority of it you can't even find online. I got some from um, the professor from the Auburn Deer Lab is actually who directed me to Iowa, Missouri, um, and then the most recent one. I had a pretty lengthy conversation with a professor, actually the lead biology professor with Florida State University. Um, and with him, it was more talking about the chemical pheromones, the Jacobson organ, because He's studied a lot on the reptile side, which it all acts the same way, whether it's the reptile or a whitetail or even us as humans. So pretty interesting stuff. Um, and Tom Hill says, "You told me you got from Randall." I don't know. But one thing Randall talks about is, you know, like septic setting in. How you can smell when someone's sick, you know, and that happens in all mammals, really. So there's a lot of scent on there. I mean, it's just, but I like to focus on that pheromone just because it's always there.
Yeah.
Um, Disturbed earth is always there. Broken vegetation is always there. Um, I'm not big on saving gut matter to put on a mock track. I mean, it's not always there, and it's so overwhelming and so overpowering that the dogs don't have a problem tracking it. So I'm not. I don't do that in my mock tracks. Um, I don't use blood at all in my training. We use it in testing, but in fact, most of the time I tell the judge I don't even care if you have blood because most of the time you don't see it anyways. But you know, uh, just that's just where my mindset is on it. Michael Beck says, "Love tracking us some bear. We only signed up for starter level in PA. If I'm not wigged out by being judged and Dexter the deer dog isn't acting like a lab pup, will there be a possibility of running a season line later in the day?" Um, yes, we can do that, Michael. Actually, Tom Hill and Chuck Darby, when we went to Mississippi, they had only signed up for the started test, and um, I actually judged their dogs, and I was like, man, these dogs have passed every level test. I mean, especially Chuck and Tom's dogs. I think every dog there had a pretty good shot. Um, there was one dog that barely passed the starter level, and then when we ran the season level the next morning, it had been sitting 13 and a half hours. And like I said, the dog barely passed the started. It smoked that test the next day. 13 and a half hours old. It was, I'd have to go back and look at my GPS and my phone, but I want to say it was 960 something yards long, and the dog smoked it. Um, so, yeah, no, that is something we could do. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, we'll wrap it up here within the next 10 minutes or so. But Chuck said, I'm ready to do the last test for Josie. Josie's a good dog. Um, and if she's not acting good that day, all you got to do is threaten to call Tom Hill and Ringo, and Josie will start working. That happened on the test line. Chuck has it on video. I'm waiting to see it. Andrew, I don't know if you tuned into last week's video, but um, Chuck had a recall right at the hit site because on that level test we don't show the direction of travel.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, Josie was like, she got a little confused because she started out on the line, and Chuck was distracted and wasn't paying attention. And so, anyways, she came back. She's like, "All right, why is he not coming with me?" Blah blah blah. They go in the wrong direction. She comes back. Well, when she came back, she's like, she started to go that way, and she's like, "I don't know if I'm supposed to go that way." And I told Chuck, I said, Chuck, we gonna need to call Tom Hill and get Ringo to come find this deer for us. And as soon as I said that, a switch flipped. She hit the trail and never looked back, never missed. It was awesome. Chuck Darby said it was John's fault. So, Andrew, how many times have you been on a track and the hunters distract you or shift your focus? And Does that happen to you on real tracks?
Used to happen a lot. Now I don't pay attention to anything the hunters say.
So we as we go through these tests and increased levels, we try to make it as realistic as possible. And part of that is being the distracting, annoying hunter.
Yeah.
And so we may or may not put something in the shot site to indicate where that deer was hit. And it's the handler's job to examine it and basically tell where they think the deer may be hit and recommended wait time, stuff like that. Um, in in Chuck's case, all that we put in there was a few little short pieces of hair. Chuck couldn't find it when we got there. So John says, "Well, you got to get down there, get closer, and wipe your hand around. Maybe the ants buried it, blah blah blah," and was distracting Chuck. And Chuck, he fell right into it, and wasn't paying attention to his dog telling him that she was on the trail. So that's what he was saying by it being John's fault. But after that, we couldn't get in his head. He was solid. He's got great dog. Brandy said Alabama needs a test. I think that's one of their dogs that Brandy's going to be selling to me. Chuck just hasn't got on board yet. Tim Schmidt says, "Do you test without blood?" So Tim, I will say this: we have experimented with it, and when there's blood, handlers make more mistakes on a test line. And the reason why is they get so focused and looking for blood that they don't watch and read their dog properly. I see it all the time. And Andrew, you've been on test lines before. Have you ever noticed that?
Absolutely. And I've seen
It
people sit there and different. I've seen it in ways where the judges have actually, which there's a lot of people don't like this, but they have run the track, a little bit of blood over a log, and the trail went to the left of the log. So
yeah.
the hunter was focused on the blood, and he didn't follow the dog and went over the log and was pulling his dog over the log to get him to go that way. So absolutely,
Yeah, I don't look for blood on a real track. I really don't look for it much on test line unless it's just super obvious. I'm focused on that dog.
yeah.
Um,
I let the hunters look for the blood.
yep. And that's one difference in our testing platform now is we do allow the people on the line to call out blood because that's realistic. I mean, you have hunters and their buddies on the line that says, "Hey, I see blood." I mean, that's just part of it. Um, but I just wanted to say that since I know Tim mentioned that as a joke, but honestly, it would benefit some people to not have blood because I've seen it. I mean, their nerves kick in and they're just start looking straight down, looking for blood the whole time. And their dog's trying to tell them that the trail's going this way, and they're looking for blood and pulling their dog off the trail. Andrew must have got a call again.
I think it did it again.
All right, welcome back.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Next time I do one of these, I'm gonna have to shut off the actual incoming calls.
Yeah, I had to do that. Normally, I use a different camera, but today I used my cell phone and linked it to the computer for the camera because I was running late. We were out there working with dogs and grilling, and so I rushed in here to last minute to get all this done. Um, But Brandy said Chuck didn't have his glasses. I would use that excuse too. She put a little laughing emoji. All right. So we got about 4 minutes left. Andrew, do you have anything you want to add to what we've talked about tonight while I look back and make sure I didn't miss any questions?
Uh, I'm trying to think of something to ask a question on. I was sitting there. How often do you guys work your dogs on practice tracks?
I can tell you my answer, my personal.
Go ahead.
I rarely work them on practice tracks. And I hate to say that, but it's because I'm working everyone else's dogs, all the client dogs. Um, so my dogs, it's like any other business, you know. A carpenter typically has a lot of projects at home because he doesn't want to come home and work on his house. Um, so I typically uh, just do a crash course tune up right before season because I'm so overwhelmed with all the other dogs. And we will mix them in and maybe once a month during the off season, but it's for me personally, and my dogs are successful doing that. But you know, we also like when I train them, I do a very stringent, you know, hardcore training in a short span, and then I just once a month tune that up. And I think you, I would say going into the first season, you know, I would if it I recommend once a week, if possible. I don't know about everyone else here. I just want to say I don't do what I should with my personal dogs.
I've always wondered about that. I get so many different answers with people saying, you know, I've got one dog that you've worked with that, and now he'll run a practice track and stuff like that. I would have to sit there and lock Echo up in a kennel, and the only time he came out is the track, a practice track, because he would walk down the practice for about 400 yards, turn right back around, and go and sit down by the car. He knows it's not real. Um, but if you make it fun to him by putting him in the box, and that's the only time he's going to get out, then he would do it. You
Yep.
know.
And when he was here with us, that's how he started out. He didn't want to go, and then when he did go, it was like go in a straight line. He's like, all right, I'm done. No, you got to make the turn. You got to go to the end. And then that switch flipped, and I mean, he's a machine. Um, Great dog, fun to work.
Oh,
Um,
he come back. He's looking at me. I mean, he's sitting on sleeping on me all yesterday, but he's it's like his personality's changed. He's like, Dad, you sent me off. I'm gonna behave myself. I'm not. I'm gonna quit.
well, we did do a fair amount of obedience work with him. He was a headstrong one, but he's a great dog, and everyone that got to watch him work just fell in love with him.
He's a sweet
Uh,
dog. I mean, um, but like I said, he's like, I'll be good. I'll be good. Don't send me away again. He sits on the couch, and he picked his little spot. Normally, he's zooming back and forth all over the house. It's like he calmed down the play.
yeah.
Uh, so
Oh
that's awesome part about it. He's not being a tornado through the house again. So
yeah. So we have a few comments come in. Brandy Darby said, "We don't run during the off season, but do start working a few weeks before." And, and you know, I kind of feel that same way with like Dixie, my cur dog. She's been on so many tracks. I mean, she's got it. But I will say, if I don't break her out and just run through the paces before season, um, the first few tracks are a little rough. Um, she knows her job. Don't get me wrong, but you know, she definitely needs that tune up, and she's I don't know if Cassidy Long's still on here, but Cassidy was her judged on her test in Georgia, and I was about half dead. Um, and sorry, another text came through. I was about half dead. Literally, I could hardly walk. I mean, I just worked myself ragged and ran that test. And Dixie on a mock track, she's like, okay, this is too easy. This is dumb. I'm bored. And you can't even tell she's tracking. She's just walking. She does this on easy tracks in the woods. Um, so she's just kind of strolling along, and I knew she was on it. Well, we get close to the end, and I'm just so out of it. And I was literally like, I don't know, 10, 15 yards from the hide. And she walked right past it. Well, she walked past it to go to the water to get some water at the end. And I go down there and I'm like, I called her a heifer or something because I'm like, what in the world is she doing? I knew she wasn't on the track and I don't know what she was doing. When I did that, she just turned and went the wrong direction. I could tell she wasn't tracking. I'm sitting here following her like a dummy. And I get a call back. And so I call her back and we're walking back and she goes straight to the, she knew where it was. And I was being a jerk and she was teaching me a lesson. But yeah, still, and I hadn't worked with her since, so I think our last track was around mid-December with her because I wanted to focus on some younger dogs. So it was almost 2 months that she didn't track, and we went out there and ran the test, and she did it. I mean, but she's also been on 700 or so tracks.
That makes a difference.
Yeah. Um, Tom, yeah, Chuck Darby says I'm gonna have to get some of those tracking shoes. Tom Hill, same here too. So Michael Beck said we picked it up recently because of the event. Starting a client dog beginning of June, bringing in a GSP puppy to our house mid-June. Crash course for Dexter will start back up in August. Have fun with the GSP. I've trained a bunch of them. That they actually make good tracking dogs. Hey, most of them are wired. Um, Chuck says he's going to get Alabama this weekend. So, Brandy, I still have your $900. So, Brandy said I could buy that dog for $900, and Chuck said no. We're still working on that. Brandy said, here's something good. Brandy said that includes a change in nutrition. We amp up on protein. So after a couple of the recent seminars we had a vet speak at them, and his recommendation is keep the high protein, high fat year round. And he did say if you want to cut back in the off season, at least ramp it up, 3 weeks to a month before. But I keep them on it year round because, like he said, you build. You look at the athletes; they don't wait until a few weeks before the competition before they build up their body and nutrition. It's year round, constant, lifelong. I mean, they don't change their diet 3 weeks to a month before competition. No, it's 6 months before, or more. So, um, let's see. Vicky Church says, Brandy Darby, very important point. More exercise equals more nutrition. So the way the vet explained it is, talking about the protein, the fat, the carbs, and he explained feeding that in the off season is like building up your savings account. So once they burn that fat, those carbs, they tap into that protein. Well, if you don't have all that built up, guess what? You're running your dog down. So you want to build up that savings account and have it in reserve, is the way that he explained it. Um, and I've got that on video. I need to get it uh, edited down to a shorter version so that I can share the speech with him. Then Mikey Maynard just commented, said my GSP Smoke does good, but he thinks he's he's in NASCAR. He's so fast you don't get to watch him. John and I worked with Smoke, and Smoke is he is a fantastic tracking dog. He is fast. We so we train every dog on lead, and Smoke we had to slow down because I don't care who you are, and you can attest to this, Andrew. No matter what kind of shape you're in, can you keep up with Echo?
No,
Yeah,
no.
you've got to train that dog to work at your pace. You will never be able to work at the dog's pace. You know, and again, Mike Maynard, he tracks off lead most of the time, so it's kind of a different scenario. But when you got to clip that lead on, you got to have that control. Gene Ferris says, I put mine on maintenance mode once March comes in. I heard by many old dogmen say high protein is not good for them if they aren't working at all. So the vet says that's not necessarily true. Um, what he recommends is you may have to cut back on the amount that you feed during that off season, but you don't have to change the amount of protein and fat. Um, he also he also went on a tangent about grain free diets. He says bad for their heart. Don't feed grain free. So something else. I need to get all that. I got it all on video. I got to have time to get all that shared. So pretty good stuff. So Mike Maynard says I had to get a vest for him when tracking the WMAs. He pulls so hard he chokes himself out. Mike, you need to give me a call. We need to get that corrected. You don't want him to be pulling even on a vest or a harness. He's burning unnecessary energy and he's wearing himself down and you down. So we need to get that corrected. Um, and that's something I hear a lot. People getting a harness because their dog pulls so hard. That's not the answer. Um, and a lot of people just doesn't know that. You want to correct the issue.
I think I don't think I have more than two fingers on my leash at any given time. Um, and I've seen some people getting pulled to the dirt, holding on with both hands. Um, but that's I see a lot of people trying to run behind their dogs, but I don't like bigger dogs, and regardless, I like my dogs kind of mediocre. I like being able to walk a pace, even if it's a fast walk, but I don't like having to run behind them or feeling like I'm being pulled along. Um, I've heard a lot of the bloodhound guys say that you're just on for the ride. I don't know. I'm sure you could correct that with the bloodhounds, but um,
Yeah, so I've got a video of my old bloodhound buddy. He pulled like a freight train his first year, and I said, you know what, this ain't gonna happen after this season.
yeah,
And I'll share the video. I got to dig it out because it's probably I don't know 10 years old. But I'll find it and I'll share it. That dog, even off lead, would would walk at my pace. If I stopped, he stopped. If I took a step, he took a step. I mean, it can be done. And actually, Andy Benson called me and asked me, "Hey, how?" Because I shared that video on their group, and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, how did you make that happen with that bloodhound?" I said, "A lot of time behind him, a lot of correction. He'd pull, snap back on that lead, and whoa, you know, um, you put in the time with the dog's going to do what you want it to do. Just no difference than obedience. But there are techniques, and it's like trying to slow down a dog or correct a dog in obedience with a harness, it's a lot harder because what does a mother dog do to a puppy? How does she correct a puppy? She puts pressure on their neck. So that quick snap on that leash, and I'm not talking, snatching them off of the ground or anything, but just a quick snap, it gets their attention. So when you're teaching a dog to heel, and you make that turn and they're going the other direction, you do a quick snap. You're not hurting them, but they realize they got pressure on the neck. Okay, I'm doing something wrong. What do I need to do? And they come back over to you. Um, so Gene Ferris asked a question: are y'all saying even if you are working off lead, you still want your dog to work slow enough for you to keep up? I am talking about on lead. Um, I will say I personally prefer my dog to work slower on lead because I've seen it happen many times where you go to a track and you think it's one thing, and then all of a sudden along the trail you see gut matter and it's only been an hour or 2 hours. I'm backing out. Um, so I have found it my success rate, my recovery rate, um, has significantly increased if I treat off lead tracking just the same as I do on lead, the same wait times, the same tactics, being able to see that trail. I'm not one of these off lead trackers that turns their dogs out, sits in the truck, and watches a GPS to drive around the block and go get them. I want to be involved in the track. I want to see what's going on. If I see something that may change, I've got a lot of time and money invested into my dog. And if I get in there and I see gut matter and it's only been an hour or 2 hours, I'm putting my dog's life at risk if I don't pull back and wait. And that's just me personally. I'm not saying that some people that does it a different way is wrong. That's just my personal opinion and my personal beliefs. And now if it's been proper wait times or they jump the deer and I know it's weak and you know they're going to get out of my sight. I mean, that's prey drive. They're going to go. But I'm talking about the actual trailing part. I like to be able to see my dog. So hopefully that answered the question, Gene. Like I said, I'm not telling you how to do things. This is just how I do it personally. So, well, Andrew, we'll give it a minute or so, see if anything else comes back in. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for coming on tonight.
I
Um, I
appreciate
know you,
that.
I know you work a ton of hours and you took time out of your schedule to do this, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people on here that appreciates it.
I appreciate you having me on. I was sitting here and I was driving through and I saw that you were looking for somebody to come on. I was like, man, what better time than now? But yeah, this is, these conversations, you know, uh, more people you have on here, I mean, you'll have different experiences and stuff like that. Um, tickled to be able to share my experiences a little bit, you know, there, I will ask one question. The guy was saying that he uses a vest so that to help slow the dog down. And it's just back on the subject real quick, but this is for you, Kenny. I will not. I've tried vests in the past, and I think they are cumbersome to the dog. The dog just moves so much slower. It seems like it's more to get snagged on. What are your thoughts on that? I think you've.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of harnesses or vests. I First off, a lot of people put their dog in a harness because they think that they can't slip out of them, but they absolutely can. I lost my bloodhound that his first season. He slipped right out of the harness and it was tight. The other side here is it's hot. Um, but my cur dog, I put a vest on him because couple people's dogs got gored, and so I started thinking, you know what, I got a lot invested in him. You know, what's it going to hurt to put an $80, $90 vest on him just for protection? Well, we were tracking in this thick, nasty swamp, and it actually got to the point where I could not we could not go forward at all. Um, our only hopes was that they would go get through the other side and we could go around. Um, well, I noticed one of my dogs quit moving on the GPS. So I I toned him back. Well, my one dog wasn't moving. I was like, "What in the world? I can't get to him." And I asked the landowner. I said, "What do we do?" And he says, "We can't get in there. There's no way we can get in there. There's just it's too thick." So finally, I said, "Well, the only thing I know to do is, and I don't like doing this, I'm gonna shock the dog and hope that he can move and get out." When I did, I heard him yell, so I knew that he was okay. Well, he ended up getting hung up on that vest. The only thing that saved him is he was finally able to slip out of that vest and get back to me. And I'll never put one on him again. I don't care if it's a harness, a vest, and even collars. I like when I'm tracking, I run the collars with the ring on them because those are designed if they get hung up, and they pull back on that ring can allow them to slip that collar in the event they get hung up. Um, Vicky Church says collar corrections is why I use a Julius IDC harness. Well, that goes back to training. Um, some dogs are more sensitive to the the pressure on the lead, but it's also that can be corrected also. But I get it. Most on lead states and on lead trackers, if they're using a harness, there's less risk of issues. But I just go back to what happens if it slips. And, I seen what happened to my dog. Well, on the flip side of that, what happens with the antler gets up underneath that vest or that harness and the dog can't get away from it. It's just sitting there slinging its head and just imagine the damage it's going to do then. You know, I have seen my dogs get thrown in the air by bucks and not have a scratch on them. You know, how's that going to happen or what's going to happen if that antler got hung up in it? But again, we're in an off lead state. Um, so there's some differences there. That's just things running through my mind. We're getting some comments coming in. Mike Manor said it's a harness, not a vest. It gets too hot for a vest. Chuck Darby says the thing I see the most is it's so much different from state to state with the same goal at the end of the day. Yes, I agree. But Chuck, I will say this one thing we see across the Southeast, especially off lead states, is a big trend in some of these states of not waiting and going in there and trying to catch deer. And I'm going to tell you, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you get your dog killed or severely hurt or killed. Not just that, but I have seen because I've been there. I mean, I haven't had a dog killed. I've had several dogs get gored, and that's why I don't do it anymore. I'm not going to go in there at 2 hours on a gut shot. I don't care who you are. And if you don't like it, guess what? Call another tracker. That's how I feel. My dog's too important to me. Um, that's why I'm just not going to do it. And on the flip side, back when I used to have that mindset of going when they called, my recovery rate was a lot less than what it is now when I utilize proper wait times and proper ethics. Brandy Darby says gut wrenching experience it is. Okies East Kansas Deer Recovery says I use a harness because I consider it safer for Okies back. Like I said, I can understand. And Okie is a wire haired Dachshund. I don't see where it's going to make a difference on the back. Maybe I'm missing something, but I just, again, my personal opinion is if I spent the time with the dog and I got it where it's not pulling, I don't have to worry. Chuck Darby said his was killed 6 hour wait time. There again, I've seen a lot of deer alive at 6 hours, but a lot of it goes into, what's the ambient temperature, shot placement. I mean, is it intestinal? Is it, everyone talks about gut shots versus intestinal. Well, 6 hours sometimes isn't enough. Well, that that again, that's why I like to have my dogs trained to trail closer to me where I'm following them versus, and I'm not saying that this was your case, Chuck. I'm just saying this is one of the reasons why I like to be able to see my dog as it's trailing. Um, because there's been times where I seen that buck get up in front of me with more life than I like to see, and I recall my dog. So you got to have a solid recall. Um, and like I said, I've had them get gored, and I've waited, on proper wait times, what I felt was proper wait times. But overall, now bow season it's 90 degrees. I'm still waiting 6 hours on a gut shot. Well, if it's gut shot in December and it's 25 degrees outside, I'm probably going to wait 10, 12 hours. And that's here in the South. I know, Andrew, where you're at is probably more 24 hours.
Yeah, we do 24 hours, but I've jumped. I don't even know what you'd call it. It'd be low gut, where the gut's hanging out. I've jumped them 3 days later and have them get up and want to fight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, wait time. You can't. Uh, you sit there and you think, oh, 24 hours, that thing's going to be dead. Sometimes it ain't. Um,
No. Nope. I mean, I've recovered. I've went back on the same deer 3, 4 days in a row before finding it dead.
oh yeah, absolutely. Those are always uh, really neat. But I've gone back 3 times in a row, and then the last time didn't find it. It was like, where did it go?
Yeah, I've done that too.
Where in the
It,
world did that thing go? I thought it'd be laying right here.
so
Uh,
Darren Miner put up a comment and said, "If you call me this evening to track, I'll see you in the morning." I am getting more and more like that. For one, I fall asleep driving too much. If I don't have someone with me, anyone that's tracked with me will tell you, it don't matter if I'm behind the wheel, I'll fall asleep like that. Many times I've slept on the side of the road, truck stops, and um, but at the same time, I'd rather wait till morning. I don't care if it's 90 degrees outside. I have yet to, I think one time out of hundreds and hundreds, well over 1,000, probably 2,000 tracks I've been on. Well, over 2,000. Maybe one time, two time. I can think of 2 or 3 times that a deer is spoiled from heat. Um, but that's what's that 1%?
now, what is your call time that normally happens with you guys in Florida? What is your how can I put that? What is the most common for people to call you? Do they call you an hour after they shot it? Do they call you 6 hours? Um,
Uh, Normally 2 to 3, 4 hours.
okay,
Um, I will say this: they're quicker to call in the evening than they are in the mornings. But even then, it might be 3, 4 hours in the evening. But the morning when they shoot it in the morning is when they get uh, half the state to come grid search with them.
gotcha.
I don't like tracking at night. Or going to. I do like tracking at night. Don't get me wrong. I just have issues driving at night anymore. I'm getting older. Um, but I prefer to track in the daytime. I feel it's safer. Um, some people say that it's, I guess, state land. They say it's safer at night. But for me, I feel safer during the day. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you've experienced that over the years, Andrew, but people tend to grid search more after a morning shot than the evening.
Yeah, and we've got, since normally it depends on what part of the season. If it's earlier in the season, yes, we'll get the calls earlier. But if it's November and it's cold, you're looking at 12 to 24 hours before you get a call.
Yeah.
They really want to sit there and do all their best to make sure they screw up the track before they call somebody.
Yeah. I like what Vicky Church said here. A dead deer doesn't move.
Yeah.
Time is always on your side. Always.
Yeah.
The
That's,
mo-
and
Go
yeah,
ahead.
people say they run in there like, oh, running away. I'm like, man, uh, I hardly ever get a call that's 6 hours. It was shot 6 hours ago. Generally, it's 12 to 24 hours. So if it's gut shot, there's a good chance that I might as well can just go ahead and try and take it, you know,
Yeah.
uh, by the time we get it. But if I got a gut shot call and they did call me at an hour, definitely not. But like I said, I've jumped them 3 days later, and actually had one that well, it sounds crazy, but it was shot low like that. We jumped it 6 days later.
Yeah.
And it actually ran all the way back to where it was shot and dropped dead.
Yeah. I've
So
seen it happen. I actually recovered one last year that we pulled off of that was gut shot. And again, this is where I like falling behind my dog because, um, I seen her. I didn't see, she got out of my sight right when she jumped, but I was able to get up there and I said, oh crap, this deer's gut shot. It's only been 2.5 hours. I heard her catch. I was actually tracking for a game warden. I heard her catch. I toned her. I said, hey, I'm calling her back. We're going to come back in the morning. This deer's gut shot. We went back the next morning, and the dog came back covered in blood. Um, she had been on the deer, and I said, look, we're not hunting deer with dogs. I'm not putting my dog at risk. It's only been 2.5 hours. This deer's gut shot. I toned her, brought her back. He said, you made the right call. That's when I found out he was a game warden. After I made that decision, and so I toned her back. We came back the next morning. We found the buck 9 yards from where we jumped it. It had circled back around and died. It was bedded down. It was in its bedding area. Since then, I've tracked, uh, I don't know, 10 or 12 deer for the guy, and every one of them we find dead in that same area. So that's their home. That's where when a deer is injured, they want to get back to their home. People think they go to water. Well, yeah, they might have hit water on their way back home, but they're wanting to get home where they feel safe, just like us. Where do you want to go if something's going wrong? You want to be at home. You start feeling sick, you want to go home and get in bed. So Brandy Darby said, LOL from the stand, smoke still coming from the barrel. Chuck Darby says depends on how much they have grid search, and Mike Maynard says they call after they had 10 buddies out looking for it. So, well, Andrew, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know you got a lot going on. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Again, thank you. Um, we I appreciate everything you do for the tracking community, and I appreciate you coming on tonight.
thanks for having me. You guys take it easy.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See y'all later. Thank you.